Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, healing from narcissistic relationships, and understanding this very complicated world of narcissistic relationships. Let's talk about trust funds, shall we? Because I'm telling you there's a different way for us to think about this. I was recently reading an article about somebody who had a trust fund. And for the most of us who don't have one of these trust funds, it's basically an account of money that is set aside by wealthy parents or other family members that a young person can typically access once they're in adulthood. Trust funds can be small or they can be vast. They can pay a lump sum or a monthly allowance. It's a rich person thing. But for people who have them, it means that from an early stage of life, they have a pretty regular flow of cash, and it can be quite substantial, coming in that they do not have to earn. And it can certainly make the rigors of early and emerging adulthood a lot smoother and easier, allowing people at a young age to acquire nice places to live, cars, experiences, stuff, and avoid the entire ramen noodle, multiple roommates, Goodwill furniture, is that a roach or small dinosaur in my kitchen phase of life that most of us had to endure. So when we think about this psychologically, it's like, that's a money trust fund, but what about a different kind of trust fund? It dawned on me that people who do not grow up with narcissistic parents or other kinds of abusive parents, and instead grow up in families where they were seen, heard, valued, recognized, encouraged, supported, and allowed to show up in the world as their true selves without being shamed or resented or silenced, I was like, could that be a sort of psychological trust fund? Think about it. Let's say you had a traditional money trust fund, right? What does it mean? It means that you don't have to take on debt. You can feel safe. You don't have to have your bandwidth worn out through the fear of having to be able to find a place to live, to make rent, the fear of losing a job, or having to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. Having a money trust fund means that you get to live in a safe neighborhood, in a comfortable manner, and have funds for self-care, whether that's therapy or vacations or just in the form of time. All of this means that a person with financial trust funds is more likely to be less stressed, healthier, and feel overall safer in the world. Listen, I know some of you are going to say your whole poor little rich person nonsense. I'm not going there right now. The fact is, for most normal people, having money lifts tremendous burdens from a person's shoulders. But in the same way, having a psychological trust fund means that you can pursue dreams and aspirations without feeling like an imposter. Move to a different place away from your family without feeling like it's an abandonment. Be able to show up as your authentic self without fear of reprisal or rejection or embarrassment. You know that you'd have a safe place to turn if the bottom ever fell out of your life. And people who are willing to hear you and believe in you and don't gaslight you. So you may feel better equipped to take risks in your life. People with what I'm calling these psychological trust funds may be more likely to advocate for themselves in their lives, to not blame themselves, and to know their own abilities and capacities, strengths and weaknesses in a holistic and realistic way. I mean, talk about money in the bank. And there's another level to this. Just as if you had a financial trust fund, it doesn't mean that all of your problems would melt away. But those of us who didn't have this kind of financial resource early in adulthood, we had to figure it out, right? We might have had more grit, hustle, creative problem solving, and even ingenuity that we see in a person who's self-made versus someone who may not have had to figure it out in the same way. But most of us who had to figure it out on our own also recognize that however we did it, we were a little less efficient or a lot less efficient, or we're not able to take advantage of every opportunity that came our way because it wasn't possible to do in the midst of doing all the stuff we needed to do to stay afloat. People who lack this sort of sense of a psychological trust fund can be quite ingenious as well. People without this, who actually get up and face another day, it sort of forces you to face your fears, Push back on anxieties if you need to get through the day. Anxieties about not being good enough. About fostering a resilience that comes from having to always quiet the negating voices that are running through your head. It's an unfortunate skill to have to acquire, but it is a bit of a gift to be able to do this. And over time, and with enough support, people who come through invalidating early environments may also often foster a flexibility and strength within themselves. But just like a young person starting out without a bunch of money in the bank, it's not impossible. Lots of us have done it, but it's harder. And frankly, I would say a psychological trust fund is far more important than money. It's that permission for our true self to exist, for our needs to be valid, for our permission to set boundaries, to be okay, and to feel safe in the world. To have that is such a gift. And with it, there's a freedom and lightness with which someone can go through a life, especially through their early adulthood. A barrier that is removed and a person can fully participate in life with. Many times, people who come out of psychologically invalidating childhoods wonder if there's something lacking in them. It's often a demon that sits on your shoulder for a lifetime. And that sense of feeling not enough can hold anyone with that kind of invalidating backstory back. And even create a vulnerability for adult relationships where that not enough dynamic gets repeated. Most of us know what not enough means in a bank account, and it's hard enough. However, the not enough that comes from not having that psychological trust fund, that psychological money in the bank, that's a whole different kind of challenge. So all you can do, as any self-made person can, is sort of create that psychological account for yourself, but it is a lot harder. Thanks again.